Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 8th, 2021 Clovis City Council meeting. Given the current shelter-in-place order covering the state of California and the social distancing guidelines issued by federal, state, and local authorities, the city is implementing changes to participate in council meetings. The council chambers will be open to the public, but we will be implementing social distancing policies, and we will limit the number of people who may be in the council chambers. The meeting will be webcast and accessed at the link shown. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at the link shown, providing written comment at the same website, participating by phone, or coming to the Clovis City Council meeting in person. We are practicing social distancing and can only accommodate a maximum of 16 persons at one time. I will call the meeting to order and ask Councilmember Whalen to lead us in a flag salute.
Please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call roll, please.
Councilmember Ashbeck.
Here.
Councilmember Flores.
Here.
Councilmember Mwanatua. Here. Councilmember Whalen.
Here.
Mayor Bessinger.
Here. And before we go to presentations and proclamations, we have the unveiling of our city flag.
Your parade?
Well, I was trying to get a fife and drum corps, but I couldn't pull one that quickly. And what Luke did was he purchased flag spreaders, so it's better display of the flag. But this is our brand new City of Clovis flag. I think it turned out extremely well, and it was a great collaborative effort between staff, council, the public. I know I probably made some people crazy on staff with little changes here and there, but I think it turned out quite well. And each council member got a flag in their little haversacks, and I think at some point they will go on sale. We'll put that on the website. I think this is a very nice thing, and it'll look really great at our rodeo parade this year, hopefully. Anyway, we have a presentation of a proclamation declaring the week of February 14th to the 20th, 2021 National Salute to Veterans Week. I'm going to read this. Whereas the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs will honor hospitalized veterans at VA medical centers, clinics, and facilities nationwide from February 14th to the 20th, 2021, during the National Salute to Veterans patients, and whereas the week of February 14th each year is your opportunity to say thank you to a special group of men and women, the more than 9 million veterans of the armed forces services who are cared for by the Department of Veterans Affairs medical centers, outpatient clinics, and nursing homes. And whereas the VA is a national entity with branches all over the United States that extends to military bases overseas. During the week of February 14th, the focus is on local VA facilities. VA aims to increase awareness of each VA medical center by encouraging citizens to visit hospitalized veterans, volunteer their time, and donate to their local VA facilities. And whereas, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs, this week-long tribute to veteran patients is intended to pay tribute to veterans, increasing community awareness of the role of the VA Medical Center, encourage visits to hospitalized veterans, and encourage volunteerism with the VA. And each year, volunteers from schools, community groups, and youth organizations nationwide send more than 100,000 Valentine's cards 2 VA medical centers for National Salute to Veteran Patients. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council does hereby proclaim February 14th to 20th, 2021 as National Salute to Veterans Patient Week. And I signed this and placed the official seal of the City of Clovis on this. I had the pleasure last year of participating in this event and pass out really cute valentines from elementary school children to bedridden veterans, and they appreciated it. And it was a very nice event. And as a U.S. Army veteran and the son of a World War II POW and Purple Heart recipient, I know the sacrifice that the men and women in uniform have made in our country's history. And tonight I did a PSA that will be given to the Veterans Administration for their event, because unfortunately, because of COVID, they can't do this inside the hospital this year, and we will present this proclamation along with the PSA for their use. Any member of the council wish to say anything? Okay, I will move on. Now we come to public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the city manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Any member of the public in council chambers wish to address the council on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have anyone on the internet?
None.
Mr. Clerk, do we get any correspondence?
We did not.
Okay, I will close public comments. In regards to ordinances and resolutions, with respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by the unanimous consent of the council. Now we come to the consent calendar. Items considered routine in nature are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item, unless a council member requests individual consideration. A council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. I'm going to pull item number 3 because there was a last-minute change. The clerk will do a presentation on item number 3, but any member of the council wish to pull item 1, 2, or 4? Seeing none, any member of the audience present wish to have any item on the consent calendar pulled with the exception of item 3? Seeing none, do we have anybody on the internet?
No.
Mr. Clerk, did we receive any correspondence?
We did not. Okay,
I will come back to council for consideration.
I'll make a motion for items 1, 2, and 4.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Clerk, could you do the presentation on item 3, please?
Yes, Mayor. For consent calendar item number 3, which is the 2021 street closure request, we have a revised resolution in front of you. You'll see it with 2 highlighted yellow paragraphs in it. And we added those paragraphs at the advice of the city attorney's office to allow the city manager certain discretion due to the possibility of changing some event dates during 2021 due to the pandemic. That concludes staff's report, and we're available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any questions for staff on this item? Lynn?
Can, the second one that's highlighted in yellow? About the Centennial Plaza, is that a new addition or is that just
Yes.
highlighted in yellow?
Both are highlighted in yellow. It should have been, paragraphs number 3 and 4 were added.
Can you talk about that just a bit? We've had this conversation before here on the 60-day notice. This is just to memorialize this idea?
Correct. And again, it just allows a certain discretion should the planned event dates change, due to the pandemic.
Not to split a hair that's not worth splitting, but the second one has nothing to do with the pandemic, right? The second one is allowing the Memorial District to close that street with less than 60-day notice, right?
You know, I'm gonna defer to Sean just to make sure.
The
'Cause
second
I
one
don't
has,
know.
not as I read it, has nothing to do with the pandemic. The first one says anything that might happen, we might have to reschedule caused by COVID-19. The second one just says 60 days or less. They're different, I think, or no?
This is only for 2021 also, right?
Correct.
So the items that were changed on the resolution are specifically, they specifically address the shorter time necessary to approve those items. Previously, the item that references Centennial Plaza and the Memorial District were not changed. So those were changed for this year, for the first time.
Okay, I know this isn't worth this, but I'm gonna try it one more time. So how long do you have to give people notice to close the streets for special events?
Okay, so it's for a new event, it's 90 days. Let's see. Okay, so we require 60 days, and that's what we reference, throughout the resolution. So anyone that is seeking to have a public event declared an Old Town special event shall seek a declaration from the City Council at least 90 days prior to the event. Okay, we also have a 60-day, and that is for planning from staff. We don't require the full 60 days. Well, here's an example. Big Hat Days was planning on having their event at the beginning of April. Half of their planning is already done. There's no way that they're going to be able to have it in April, so they've moved it, and now they're planning on June. They don't need the full 60 days to plan the thing.
Okay, sorry about this. There's no mention of 90 days anywhere in the first two paragraphs. So they're actually, I think that it's not clear to me. All the things you just said actually aren't in here. So if we need 90 days, I feel like it should say that. If we're gonna say only these two locations can do it less than 60, that's different. And if the first one in yellow says I can change the dates because of the pandemic and the 90-day term goes away, I'm not tracking. Nowhere does it say 90 days or 60 days in here, except you can do it for less than 60 on those two locations anyway. It's just not, I don't know if I didn't know what you were talking about, I wouldn't be able to track this.
No, I completely apologize. So in your packet, you have a copy of the ordinance.
Right, but we're not voting on that. We're voting on this resolution, right?
I'm sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought that you were asking the difference between the 90 days and the 60 days.
I'm asking about the resolution in front of us that doesn't say 90 or 60 anywhere, and the ordinance is probably not always going to be with, I'm just saying, this by itself doesn't tell me anything. So does the resolution language need to be more clear? It's 90 days for this and 60 days for that, but we can make it shorter and change it for the pandemic. This doesn't say what you just said. Is that a problem?
Yeah, if I could add, with hopefully not adding to the confusion.
I know, why not?
The code authorizes the council to delegate that authority to the city manager. So the code says within 90 days, there's got to be a declaration of a special event. This resolution is designed to be that declaration of the special events for 2021. We've specifically delineated those special events, but then the two additional special events that are going to be designated potentially, but we don't know at the beginning of this year or at this time whether the Centennial Plaza or Memorial District will have special events. So this resolution delegates that authority to the city manager to make that declaration as authorized by the code. I'm not sure if that adds to your confusion,
Well,
but again,
Can I jump in?
No? Yes.
Okay, so on the code section that we have attached, under section 5.20.03, subsection B, it says, any person seeking to have a public event declared an Old Town special event shall seek a declaration from the city council, not from the city manager, but from the city council at least 90 days prior to the event. And then it says, in D, the city council may, by resolution, delegate the authority to declare an Old Town special event and to temporarily close city streets in connection therewith to the city manager, and the city manager's designee. So what this resolution does, as I have understood it, is on that fourth paragraph, it's making really clear that we're making an exception to this 90 days in the ordinance and delegating to the city manager under subsection D the authority that is within the ordinance, and we're saying that it can be with less than 60 days notice. And I think that's appropriate. I'll just go on to comment that I think that that's appropriate in light of the circumstances we find ourselves under, where, you know, nobody knows when the lockdown is going to be removed or when it's going to be safe to engage in these particular types of events. So I think under the umbrella of the ordinance, we're allowing flexibility to those organizations who want to engage in Old Town special events to make a pitch to the city manager to make those modifications as necessary. I thought that was brilliantly stated.
Me too. If everyone is, I don't track this with this resolution. If this resolution was a standalone document, it doesn't reference the code, it doesn't reference the ordinance, it's probably not worth any of this conversation. If it's clear to these folks, I'm good, but it's not clear to me that it's 90 days, 60 days, without this attached. So I get the pandemic adjustment. I just, in my mind, this doesn't help. If this is out there by itself, no one will have any idea what to do, nor where to find it in our code. That's all.
understood.
But if it's clear to everyone else, and I'm the only one that doesn't get it, I'll give you that. Do you understand it?
If I may, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. My understanding of the 60 days is only for the permitting. The 90 days is to declare an event a special event. So that's still there. So in order to declare anything a special event, it still needs 90 days. For it to be listed as AB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever it is. We only have 5 here. But the permitting is waived, from what I understand, with the 60 days. And so that's why I understood it. So the 90 is still there, but once it is a special event, it still needs 60 days to get the permits, but then that can be waived by the city manager because some things can be shorter because these organizations can hold something. And so that's what I'm understanding. So is that correct?
This is where you're going to say, English isn't my first language, but even
English is not my first language.
Okay, does this make
but I've
sense
been
to
a
you?
cop for how many years? How many years have we been? 40 years, and we read the law just like lawyers do every day. And we have, the first law is our city ordinance, and our city ordinance says that it takes 90 days, and that we can, through a resolution, and this is a resolution, can give authority to the city manager. And this is, so when someone comes here, they first have to abide by our ordinance. And our ordinance has a way that we can give authority to the city managers through a resolution. So they first rely on the ordinance. Then they rely on the resolution that we are authorizing today. If there's a resolution in hand that says there's an exception, and we're doing it today, then the city manager has the ability to do whatever this new resolution says. And I think Councilmember Whalen explained it perfectly by just reading the ordinance.
No, he didn't. Don't give him any credit. It's fine. I could have done a better job linking these documents, but.
And I can say it in Spanish if, no.
Could you? But could you sing it in Spanish? Okay. My point is, we didn't do it. We could have done a better job linking the two, but if everyone is clear except me, I'll never have a special event in Old Town Clovis.
Lynn,
I don't know how many days to request.
we can make one small modification, Lynn, to basically to reference the ordinance and attach it to tie the two together.
Well, to Joe's point, people that know about the law, we'll find it. I mean, right, you know where to go. It's fine, we're done with this. This has outlived its usefulness on the conversation. I even think that. Thank you.
Actually, Lynn, I agree, we should probably reference the ordinance in this so that it's official for the record. You know, we want to be able to be flexible in the event that things turn on a dime, and we can put on an event that would be a unifying thing for the community and help small businesses. I think that would be nice. So I guess maybe, I guess we're going to do a motion to put the
I'll make a motion, I'll make a motion because I'm totally confused. It'll be a great motion whenever we're ready.
What, any other discussion? Since we've discussed this, we'll open this to the public. Any member of the public wish to address the council on this item? Anybody in chambers? Seeing none. We have anybody on the web?
No.
Ms. Clerk, I'm assuming we got nothing on this.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not going to do it in Spanish, but I'm going to make a motion that we approve this with the addition of the ordinance number included in the resolution. Second. Yay.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
I think that was very appropriate.
Thank you.
Administrative items. Administrative items are matters on the regular city council agenda other than public hearings. Item number 5 is consider approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the City of Clovis and the California Health Sciences University addressing the build-out of CHSU campus. CHSU applicant and Renee is our presenter. Renee.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight's item before you is a memorandum of understanding between the city and the California Health Sciences University. Staff is recommending approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the MOU between the city and the university to address the build-out of the campus. So a little background that brings us to our recommendation tonight. So back in 2016, the city approved an administrative use permit for the campus that totaled approximately 70 acres. That 70 acres included approximately 45 acres of educational buildings and supporting uses and approximately 24.5 acres for student housing. Since June of 2016 through 2020, CHSU and its operating group has been able to acquire additional land and has therefore expanded really their vision for the CHSU campus. Currently, according to their operational statement, their vision now totals about 123 to 138 acres. And the reason there's a range in there is there's about 15 acres that the operating group is currently either in negotiations or is acquiring. But for tonight's presentation, I'm really focusing on the 138 acres because that is their entire vision for the build-out of the campus. So again, the 138 acres consists generally of approximately 61 acres of educational, administrative, and supporting uses, approximately 70 acres of campus housing, which would be for student and faculty, and then up to 7 acres for ancillary commercial uses. Back in November, staff presented to you an update along with CHSU and its operating group to proceed with council's direction on this new expanded vision. So council's direction back in November was fairly detailed, and so what we wanted to do tonight is just kind of remind you of the direction. So back in November, the direction was to further define the need and timing for campus housing, the identification of appropriate mechanisms that tie the housing to the university, to craft guardrails that create a better tie between the housing and CHSU, to ensure student and faculty housing is necessary and essential. And again, there was discussion back in November that really live-work were the only permitted uses in the RT Park, primarily south of Nees along Locan Avenue. Another way of saying that, just standalone single-family residential homes were not allowed. However, housing tied to the university in support of the university was considered allowed. Council also wanted staff and the applicant to address whether student and faculty housing should be phased for demand as the campus expands, to address the question as to whether or not student housing should be restricted just to the students. If not, should there be a percentage restricted to the students? And to have staff work with the applicant to develop a master plan that demonstrates the campus housing and its ties to the university. So following council's direction, staff has been working with CHSU, specifically their operating group, to address these council's direction. So we've addressed the direction in the following manner. CHSU and the operating group has prepared an updated operational statement, which is an attachment to the staff report. They have prepared a conceptual master plan for the ultimate development of the campus and the campus housing. They have prepared a campus phasing plan, and that phasing plan, again, if you look at the legend, it includes the higher end, the 138 acres. And they also prepared or hired a consultant to prepare an economic impact study on what the development would mean to the area. City staff, in conjunction with our legal counsel, prepared the draft MOU that's before you tonight. So now to dig into the points of each of these items. So for the operational statement, looking specifically at land use and phasing, again, the operational statement identifies a total build-out or vision of 123 to 138 acres. The 138 acres are further defined in 3 phases. Phase 1 includes approximately 45 acres around the existing College of Medicine and additional schools, admin spaces, clinics, student centers, auditoriums, and supporting uses. Now this phase 1, just as a note, you know, the original first campus is located right here, and that covers roughly about 20 acres. Phase 2, so there's phase 1. Phase 2 is the student and faculty housing. The student housing, which would be located to the west of Temperance Avenue, covers approximately 20 acres. It's the multifamily housing. And then the single-family housing for faculty would be east of Temperance, and it covers roughly 50 acres. And then there's also related amenities associated with the multifamily housing. Phase 3 covers approximately 23 acres, of which 16 are earmarked for future schools of medicine and ancillary commercial uses that would cover up to approximately 7 acres. So now digging even deeper specifically into the student and faculty housing, which is really the phase 2 of the master plan, or the area that covers approximately 70 acres. So the student and faculty housing, as currently proposed and identified in the operational statement, right now is anticipated to provide approximately 286 apartments, potentially 64 townhomes, and 250 single-family dwelling units as currently envisioned. There's various amenities that are associated with the multifamily or the student housing, and those amenities could include such items as a student union or a clubhouse, again, further defined in the operational statement by the applicant. These types of amenities are to support the student population, the faculty, and any visitors. So the need for the housing, as identified in the operational statement, the applicant has indicated that the need for the student housing has really already been triggered, and the demand is only expected to accelerate by 2023. For the faculty housing, the applicant indicates that it is needed now for construction to start in 2021 if occupancies are to become a reality in 2022. The operational statement also discusses the connection and design, which was another point of discussion back in the November meeting. So as conceptually laid out, the overall campus design will establish a sense of place. And a sense of place is really kind of defined in the RT Park architectural guidelines in terms of the siding of the buildings, the parking, the pedestrian pathways, incorporating the natural environment, so the landscaping. So this conceptual plan really tries to highlight the importance of the connectivity both within and between the campus elements. It serves to build out any of the proposed pathways, sidewalks, to enhance the circulation. And the operational statement also talks in various spots about how it will incorporate the RT architectural guidelines, and that they're committed to a really high-quality design and contemporary appearance as this campus builds out. In addition, in the operational statement was an economic impact report that the CHSU and its operating group had prepared by a private consulting firm, QK. The main points of the impact analysis is it evaluates a 7-year period. So it basically looks at 2020 through 2027. It accounts for CHSU's operations and spending, the student spending, capital expenditures, and then the related CHSU facilities, including housing. The results of the study, as prepared by the consultant, indicate that approximately 530 permanent jobs would be created as a result of this development. More than 2,000 one-time jobs would be created, particularly in the construction sector. The cumulative economic output would be more than $580 million, and more than $350 million would be injected into the local and regional economy from this capital investment. So again, just to kind of bring you back to tonight's item before you is really consideration of this MOU. And I just wanted to highlight at this point in my presentation that all of the prior documents, the operations statement, the conceptual plan, the phasing plan, the economic analysis, it's staff's best effort at taking the direction council provided back in November to prepare this MOU. So we really tried to focus on what you directed us to do. So now to dive into the MOU, kind of its purpose and intent. The MOU is really to memorialize the mutual understanding with respect to how the campus will develop out, including, and most importantly, the campus-affiliated housing. It will serve as a guide in the development of the campus and the processing of the future entitlements. It's crafted to incorporate the guidance and direction, again, that council provided back in November. And it was also prepared by our attorneys with coordination and review by staff and the CHSU representatives. So key features of the MOU is it acknowledges student and faculty housing as being integral to the campus, so it is supportive and it serves the campus. Another very important feature, which was a lot of the discussion that happened in November, is it provides a restrictive covenant that specifies that no campus housing property can be sold without first being offered for sale to CHSU for a period of no less than 30 days. And to dig down a little deeper, that basically CHSU has like the first right to offer the housing to their students, their faculty, or their campus personnel. And this is in perpetuity. So every time a property is up for sale, CHSU will have the right to provide that property to their faculty, students, and or personnel.
Can I interrupt just on that point? Because I want to make sure I've got this question while it's fresh in everybody's mind. And it's either you, Renee, or Scott, or Dave. Has this type of restrictive covenant been used with success when it comes to university housing that you guys are aware of? I know we had a list
Right.
of other universities that, you know, tried to figure out how to do something similar.
Sure. So I'll defer to Scott. I don't know if this has been successful, but I know this was in looking back at all of the other options, the ground leases, the deed restrictions. This seems to be the most palatable for the university and successful, but I don't know if it's been successful in other areas.
I guess I would ask what you mean by success. It has been used. My recollection from the previous staff report is there's a number of universities that have this similar type of restrictive covenant. Now, whether or not, those universities go out and purchase every single parcel that comes back up to them in a first right of refusal position, or they get the notice and choose within that 30 days not to exercise it on a given property, that's going to be the prerogative of CHSU. They'll get that notice with every parcel that comes up for sale. It doesn't obligate them to buy every parcel, but they're going to have the ability to buy whichever parcels and how many parcels they choose to buy.
I guess for me, the definition of success is whether this is a covenant that will be enforceable in a court of law. So, for example, let's say that I'm somebody who wishes to purchase some of the single-family residential in this area, and I have that covenant which requires me to first offer the property to CHSU, at least for that 30 days. And if I don't want to do that, then what is the remedy? And are we familiar with whether this type of covenant has been litigated in such a fashion that that type of restriction is something that is legally tenable?
Yeah, presumably it would be enforceable by CHSU. They would be the ones that would have the ability to do it. It will be recorded, so it will be picked up in the chain of title, presumably again during any escrow for a sale. That's going to be a condition. But again, I think it would be up to CHSU as the holder of that first right of refusal to go and enforce it. And I can tell you, I've been involved in litigation on a first right of refusal, and they are specifically enforceable. So a court could order specific performance, could actually unwind or at least place an injunction or cease some sort of transaction that was entered into without complying with the first right of refusal.
Right.
So let's say, for instance, you had a seller that said, forget about this, I'm not going to offer CHSU this first right of refusal, entered into a purchase and sale agreement with some third party without complying with the first right of refusal. CHSU, if they wished, could seek a court order, hold off on that sale. You've got an obligation to present it to us for 30 days, and we have that 30-day ability to purchase.
And this would not have an impact on the heirs of an estate, presumably. That's not necessarily a sale transaction, so therefore, if I am, again, the owner of a piece of property there, I die, my heirs can grab it without having to go through the 30-day, waiting period for CHSU.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So continuing, multifamily campus housing will also include provisions for targeted marketing and special lease terms for students, faculty, and campus personnel. So again, this is the incentive for the students there that would be leasing or renting the multifamily. And again, all building and housing would be consistent with city standards and our architectural guidelines in the RT Park. Additional key features of the MOU is the physical connection within and across the campus, and that a campus housing plan would be provided with the AUP amendment at the time that it's submitted. It's important to note that at this point in the juncture, specific timing has not been provided by CHSU other than what has been included in the operations statement, and that is really that the need for faculty housing is now. And I'll really rely upon CHSU and the operating group to go into more detail as to the timing and the need for that housing and how that plays into their recruitment to ensure the success of the continued build-out of the school. CHU will also have to submit at the appropriate time an amendment to the AUP that will incorporate this revised master plan and the campus housing phasing. And then all future entitlements for the campus development will be processed in accordance with the city's development code and our standards. One important item to also note that's in the MOU is that if any additional land is added for campus housing, so any land above the 70 acres that's currently earmarked as part of Phase 2, It will need to come back to council in the form of an amendment to the MOU. So that is one of the triggers that would require the MOU to be opened back up and back before you. And then also, CHSU, because they're not typically in the business of building homes or, actually building the campus, they may select a builder or builders to develop out any portion of the campus and the campus housing. What the MOU requires is that for all applications for the relevant land use entitlements, we will need a CHSU stamp of approval from one of their highest ranking officials. So they will be involved and part of the, I don't want to say approval process, but approving who's developing in accordance with the master plan and the phasing. So I threw this RT Park overall development status map in because I think it's important to kind of reflect on the RT Park and where we are. So at a very high level, the RT Park in general covers approximately 343 acres. CHSU is looking at developing out, according to their most current operational statement, approximately 138 of those acres. Now, again, just as a side note, of the 138 acres, they've developed approximately 20 here in their first phase. In addition to what CHSU has as part of their operational plan, there's been about 48 acres that have already been developed, and you see that here in this corridor along Temperance and Alluvial. So that 48 acres is covered by Fire Station 5, the Park and Ride Lot, you've got Sunrise Pavilion, you've got the Sierra Portal, you've got the trail improvement. So that's what covers those 48 acres. So when you subtract out from the 343, which is the entire RT Park, what CHSU has in front of us for consideration and what's been developed to date, the 48 acres, it leaves you with roughly 155, just round numbers of acres left to be developed. And so generally speaking, that's the area in the pink. So that 155 acres covers north of 70 individual parcels, and those parcels range in size from an acre to more than 11 acres. So again, this was just to kind of bring back into perspective the RT Park and its current development status. So my last slide for my very long presentation is a slide to just remind council that in January, our staff took before you an item to initiate the cleanup of the zoning in the RT Park. Council did authorize staff to commence or start that cleanup. And so this is just to remind the council that the cleanup is underway. It will require a GPA, a rezone, and ordinance amendments to really bring the non-compliant zoning into consistency. Right now, we're targeting for the cleanup to be complete this spring, and it'll be back before Planning Commission and City Council for approval. One of, obviously, the biggest benefits of the cleanup is it eliminates the need for owners to rezone individual sites, and it really does streamline the future development in the area, and it brings all of the parcels into consistency. So with that, I just wanted to remind council of what staff's recommendation is tonight, and that is we're recommending approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the MOU between the City of Clovis and the California Health Sciences University, specifically addressing the build-out of the campus. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I am available to answer what questions I can. I've got planning staff here with me if we dig deep into some land use planning, and I know CHSU and its operating group is also here and would like to present as well.
Thank you, Renee. Any questions? Lynn?
I'm not sure how to ask this question, but so we talked about covenants to sell the parcels CHSU has first right of refusal. Is there a scenario where we imagine the CHSU operating group ever selling the land themselves to someone else? Does any is there any kind of, you know, it wholesale, don't want the 70 acres? Is that a factor to consider? I don't imagine that's in anybody's future, but it just made me think about the sale of individual parcels. Do we need to account for if the operating group says, oh, changed our mind, or we don't want to do housing or whatever? Is that a worry to think about or to have language about, or I know they're not going to do that, but just in case someday we're all not sitting here, just a question.
Yeah, the right of first refusal covers the property as a whole. So it would be recorded against each individual parcel that is subsequently subdivided, but it covers the all of the land that's going to be subject to campus housing. So even the 20 acres of multifamily and the roughly, 65, 50 acres of single family.
So if the operating group decided to sell the entire single family map to another somebody, that first right of, how does that work? I'm the CHSU is the seller. I'm not going to exercise first right of refusal because I'm selling it.
Well, CHSU wouldn't necessarily be the seller. It's the operating group that's a separate entity that would be the seller. So CHSU University would have the right of first refusal.
I see. Okay. So two distinct.
It runs with the land.
It runs, yes. It would be recorded and run with the land.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was tracking that thought. Okay. Thanks. I have a couple of questions, but I might wait till the CHSU folks are done.
Vaughn. Question with regards to, it states here that the campus housing phasing plan will be provided later, right? So there's none now. There's indication of a need for potential housing for faculty, but then the plan itself will come later. Will that be a public hearing, or would that just be a staff sort of item?
So I'll take that. I'm trying to get to their document. Okay. So one of the attachments to the staff report is a phasing plan that has been prepared by CHSU and their operating group. So that phasing plan will need to accompany the amendment to the AUP or future entitlements. In addition to the phasing plan, the MOU calls out for the timing. So that is one item that we don't currently have specifically from the operating group, and I think they're going to want to talk in regards to that because, again, according to the operational statement, the need is now for them to start that housing.
But then when that comes, it's not going to require another hearing like this?
It does not.
Okay.
So AUPs typically get approved at the staff level, so they don't normally come back before Planning Commission or City Council.
Okay. But then it says later on page 51, any proposed changes to the master plan or campus housing phasing plan that propose to add land for campus housing or propose a change in land use will require City Council approval. So what's the difference between those sort of, what I just asked and then what this is saying?
Sure. So the campus master plan for phasing has called out as part of phase 2, 70 acres of housing. That 70 acres is broken down by 20 acres of multifamily, 50 acres of single family. If the operating group comes back and says, I'm just going to hypothetically say this, we want 80 acres, that's additional land being added to the housing component, that would require an amendment to the MOU. So that would come back before City Council for your review and approval.
What if there's just a shifting internally? If stays 70, but maybe they go, oh, let's do all 70 single family, does that require coming back?
That does not, as
so
the MOU is currently written, it does not require an amendment.
Okay, and then a decrease also doesn't require them coming back. So let's say instead of 70, they're just going to do 50.
Right.
I just want to be clear.
A decrease does not require an amendment. And again, I don't want to steal their thunder in their presentation, but in the operations statement, there is a lot of discussion about the need for flexibility and the market demand. And so as the school builds out, they may need to make adjustments to the ancillary services that they're identifying to meet the demand that would support the students, the faculty, and the campus personnel to really be the integral part of making sure that the campus is successful. So it's very clear that there will be refinements as the plan continues to morph within the boundaries of what they've identified as part of their phasing. So tonight, really before you is the MOU that provides the framework.
Yeah.
When the applicant comes back with the amendment to the AUP, which staff would recommend that come after the zoning cleanup, because again, we would not process an AUP to allow them to proceed if the zoning wasn't consistent. So as part of that amended AUP, then their phasing plan will be included, and then any specific timing as identified in the MOU.
Was there outreach to the already developed businesses with regards to what we're proposing tonight? And if so, were they in support? Were they really in opposition? Or were there no outreach to those that have already developed the current businesses?
So I'll have to defer to the applicant when they present to identify if they've done any outreach. At this point in time, development of the MOU did not require outreach. However, AUPs, they do require public noticing. So as the amendment gets processed, there will follow the standard practices.
Okay. And then my last question for now is, with regards to the multifamily, can there, or how do we make it where there are a certain number of affordable and or student units? I know that they don't want to manage it, but then we've made developments where we require certain multifamily to have a certain number of affordable units in it. And so that way, at least we know students can afford it if we did it here as well. And that's where I'm trying to go. So how do we help ensure that? Is there a mechanism, or is that not something we can do here?
Right. So what CHSU and the operating group has identified, I believe in their operation statement, and I'll really defer to them, but I do know that the MOU calls out that there would be incentives provided by the operating group for multifamily is pretty much targeted for the student. So I don't know if that's a reduction in the lease per month. I mean, that's something that the operating group will have to address. We haven't received that kind of detail. Now, would there be a number of specific units set aside? We'd have to really defer to the operating group on what their kind of outreach and incentives would be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'll open this up to members of the public. Any member of the public in chambers wish to address the council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. We are happy to be back in front of you from our November council date. Renee mentioned that she didn't want to steal any of our thunder. She nailed my presentation almost verbatim, so that ship has sailed. The only thing, well, first let me add that Darius is here to answer any questions. Flo Dunn, president of CHSU. Raina Blackburn, that has managed the lion's share of the economic feasibility study that we've worked on for the last 2 months with staff, as well as John Coring with Quadnoff. So any questions specific, they're here to answer. We have had so many hours put into this with Renee and staff. Their support has been very helpful. What we feel very confident in is that we've placed enough checks and balances that as we define any incentives for the multifamily affordability, every application will need to be approved. So when we come back before you to have those specific entitlements approved, all of those answers will be, or questions rather, will be answered. At this time, because we had a little bit of a stop and regroup in November, we don't have that phasing. What we felt comfortable with is capping what we own now, outlining the boundaries, and really continuing to work with staff on ironing out the phasing and the specifics. So with that, any specific questions, our team is here to answer.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions for the applicant? Vaughn?
Christine, can you share with regards to the importance of retention of faculty with regards to just,
Flo Dunn is here
Okay.
to talk a little bit about that. And she'll reiterate
housing.
some of what she shared in November, but I think she did a really good job. Flo, can you join me?
And also speak to what type of housing the faculty wants. Do they, do they want a multifamily little unit, or do they actually really want a house where they can raise their family? And so that way you can understand the need and how we retain the best.
Good evening. Nice to see all of you. Bear in mind, we are a postgraduate college. That means all faculty has to have a terminal degree. So what that means is, since we are like either PharmD or PhD or MD, so they tend to have a family and they have children. Right now, as all of you may know, my pharmacy school dean is desperately looking for housing, and right now there's none. So they all really like Clovis. Of course, we tout school districts, so they all make sure they're in the Clovis school district. So it's important to them to be close to the school. The Assimi family developed DeVille, which is closer, and everybody say, oh, great, I can either walk or bicycle. So, and they're really pleasantly surprised when you're most of the faculty are also out of state. And I hate to say that Fresno doesn't necessarily always have a very good reputation. So when they truly come and visit, they're pleasantly surprised. And so I think it's important to provide that ability, and the idea is to have them have the first rights to these homes too. That's important to them. But we do need, most of them are homes. There's very few that are looking for apartments. If they come and stay in apartments, that's only temporary, till they get a lay of the land and figure out, which part of town I should be.
Any other questions? Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on Bong's earlier question related to the type of incentives that the school intends to provide for those who are going to be wanting to stay in the multifamily housing. I mean, incentives can come in many shapes and sizes, and they can be either big or small. And obviously, we're going to want to make sure that, and I think you guys do too, that the students who want an apartment there can get an apartment there at a pretty reasonable price.
I think that's a Darius question.
Good evening. So we really don't have an affordable housing element attached to the student housing or the faculty housing. As Flo said, this is a secondary College of Medicine, College of Pharmacy. It's really postgraduate. So we're really dealing with a different clientele. It's not the Fresno State or City College applicant that's coming to CHSU and taking advantage of that student housing. Very similar to what you see in student housing at Fresno State or other universities here in the Valley. Almost all of them are regular market rate. Now, what they do to make it affordable, they have they bunch up a bunch of people in one unit, 3 or 4 bedroom units, and our design is slightly different because we know our clientele is going to be slightly different. We have, again, folks that are not 18 or 19 years old, but in the mid-20s up to mid-30s. That's part of our current student population at CHSU. So we're targeting that group, and we don't have an affordable housing component because the minute you have affordable housing, to have affordable housing, you need some kind of a subsidy, some kind of a tax credit of one kind or another, and most of those will trigger prevailing wage. So we're really a market driven. Now, the good news for the students, at least for the first few years, is that we're planning on building whatever that number was, I think 330 or 40 units. So the supply out of the gate is going to be relatively good, but I can also tell you 10 years from now, 10 or 15 years from now, that will be nowhere near enough. We could have as much as 2,000 students on campus with only 340, 50 units available. So at some point down the road, there's going to be a need for more student and faculty housing.
So Darius, I guess my question is related to one of the bullet points in the presentation, which discussed how when it comes to the multifamily housing, that there will be an opportunity for those who are at CHSU to receive that housing on favorable terms. And
Correct.
So I'm trying to identify what favorable terms means.
And favorable is going to be a flexible term. I can tell you, if it was ready today, based on the information we know today, it'll be substantially reduced deposits. So you can get into it. It's almost like no money down entry. We have, now, although CHSU is really not impacted, what would happen if there's a second wave of COVID and people can't pay the rent? So it would be flexibility in conjunction with CHSU for those students. But also remember, the minute we identify this project as an affordable housing project, typical banks won't be interested in financing it. So now I need to find, most of the banks that we work with would not be interested, because now they go, okay, you have a subsidized rent. Your typical rent should be, I don't know, making this up, $1,200 a month, and you're now at $600 a month. So that $600 a month translates into a lower valuation of your property. So they won't be interested in financing it. And so now you have to find financing options that Housing Authority tracks down. Right, and that's really a whole different world and a different arena that we don't want to get involved in, because number one, we're not good at, and number two, most of those, not all, but most of those trigger prevailing wage, and your cost now is up 35 or 40%. So we're looking at incentives, how to get students in, because we also know students, even though our students are older in population, and some are actually immigrants from other countries, to our area, initial deposit could be a problem, and that's one of the things that we're working on. If it was available today, 5 years from now, the needs are going to be different. And I don't know. We have a variety of tools in the chest that we want to offer to CHSU students only.
Okay, I just want to kind of think out loud. If I'm a server over at Riley's, and I'm looking for an apartment, and I want to be able to be close to where I work, then this apartment complex is going to be very attractive to me. And I don't care if I have to pay a deposit. I've been working at Riley's for a while. I'm going to go in, I'm going to put that money down, and now that apartment is no longer going to be available for a student CHSU. If you have enough, let's say that I'm a nurse over at Clovis Community Medical, and I'm just starting out, I can go over to that apartment and I can get a unit there. And so I am worried about all of those units being consumed by people who are not the intended target. Even though you market to them and that you say it's going to be no deposit, there are, not that many apartment complexes out there. So I really would like to encourage you to, obviously serve those people that are your intended target in a way that's going to fill that apartment complex up with students.
Let me actually, maybe I didn't clarify. There will be offered to CHSU first. Every apartment will be offered to CHSU students first. If there are no takers, then it'll go to the public. And so they'll have the incentive, and they'll get the first right to get in there. By the way, I think we want to, I haven't really discussed this with Flo. Some of these students will be eventually rotating at community. And we want them, the goal would be, even though we're not publicizing it, there will be a few nurses and physicians from CMC that are staying there temporarily, working, and commingling with students.
That's helpful. So there's going to be a first right,
Yes.
almost not a first right of refusal, but a first right to those people who attend CHSU.
Correct.
Whether they're students or faculty.
Correct.
Or the former staff.
Right.
Okay.
And the good news with the college, all these students cycle at the same time. They all come in the summer, and they all sign up for a year. So when we're ready, like Daria said, we will offer to all the student population first, give them advance notice for them to terminate the lease wherever they are, for them to come. I think so. The cycle itself will probably, all departments will be taken. That I don't think it's a worry.
Flo, can I ask you, you have your first class, how big of is the need for the students in this first class for housing?
Well, they all need housing, right?
Okay.
I think...
Like, how difficult is it for them to find right now that where you're going, your staff is spending time?
I'm trying to think of the percentage. Actually, just because some students live here doesn't mean they want to live at home.
Okay.
So what we do is when we recruit students, we create their own Facebook page group, and they connect all of them. So most students will go in groups to find places to live. So that's how we connect them. So they go in chunks. So it's very easy for us to show that it's available here. Please come, walkable, all that space. Last year we have 79 medical students.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're aiming for 121, and next year we get to 162. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to ramp up pretty quick. Yeah. And then also, since I'm bored, right? The task of looking at the campus is we have to build out that campus is a daunting task. Looking student housing. Student housing, lounges, library, people want a basketball court, all that good stuff, a gym, And then on top of that, we are also planning to build out the pharmacy school. But then one of my projects that on my plate is we're going to open a school of allied health. And I'm looking at, I haven't told you that, Darius. I'm actually looking at, there's another university in Arkansas who's just building 3 colleges, one after another. It's all allied health. And I think it's sorely needed that in our region, and as your brother keeps saying, you have to hurry up. So that's, 5 years is going to come very quickly. And we promised the planning department that we'll give them more time to help us complete the project, and so we can do it properly. So that's basically what we've been planning.
And we state here it's 150 invested in RT Park. Can you share a little bit how much has been invested just in the pharmacy school? Because I see it all as one, even though the pharmacy school is in a triangle.
Pharmacy school, so far we spent about between 12 to 13 million. Okay. And that's not including the building they built and not in county 120, 145, and 65. The 12 million is just for the operation of the pharmacy school. So the real estate side is a few more millions, I would say. So, and that's just where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you.
Flo, I'm sure you probably have thought of this. We have a student housing complex that we built probably 15 years ago, and I think we learned a lot from the mistakes that we made. You'd have three bedrooms, 3 strangers, 1 PG&E bill. They would argue amongst themselves. Somebody would leave, lock the door, turn off the power, and then you had people subletting. And so part of this is we have to make sure that we professionally manage this too, so that it doesn't become a draw for police services that is totally unnecessary. So I just, if you'll put that information in and factor that in when you come up with a plan.
Well, I think the students that enter into professional schools, they're pretty focused, they're pretty dedicated, and I think, shall we say, they're a little bit more mature too. We're not
Right,
dealing
but
with undergrads.
People are people, unfortunately,
Well, I know,
regardless.
trust me, I signed the lease for my son when he went to UC Irvine. I said, how come I'm guaranteeing the other two? So I know exactly what you're saying, but point well taken, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
If I may, Mayor,
Yes.
address that also. We actually took that into consideration, so we actually, on purpose, we don't have those 4-bedroom, 4-bath units. They're by and large 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And then there's, actually for families, we have townhouses that are almost 2,000 square feet. And also, Councilmember Vaughn, Montua, in 4 years, there'll be 600 just medical school students. And we'll have, what was that number again? 340 or 50 units available. So we know that in short order, there's going to potentially be a shortage of student housing.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will open this to other members of the public. Any other member of the public in chambers wish to address council on this item? Seeing none, do we have anybody on the internet?
No.
Mr. Clerk, do we get any written correspondence?
No.
Okay, I will close public comments and come back to the council. Just as a matter of disclosure, I participated in a Zoom meeting with the applicant where they briefed me on this. Any discussion or action from the council? Lynn?
Comment. I did. I also heard from the applicants via Zoom as well. I think just a couple of comments. So thank you for your work. Thank you, staff, for hearing us in November. I think my point that night was making sure we have something that looks like it goes together and not a series of assorted parcels that we said, oh, yes, this is the park. So I think you've done a nice job of that, and the trail connections and whatnot through the master plan, I think, is really important. I do think it's an interesting question. The economic impact, hello, Mr. Query, nice to see you. The economic impact is it's a very important number, but I think it doesn't really account, I don't think it really accounts for the other medical development that's occurred in the corridor. So I do think City of Clovis is positioned well with Valley Children's, VA, the Kaiser facility, United Health Centers, CMC, and then the healthcare campus, I think is really an important addition. So maybe the economic study accounted for some of that, so I think we can't underestimate the impact of the medical neighborhood or corridor developing out there in that part of Clovis. So, and certainly CHSU is a significant part of that. So thank you for that. I think you've been a big boost to that area, attracting other providers as we go along. I do have a question for my colleagues. It's an interesting one. Remember some years back, probably 6-8 years ago, we had an application for a use in the R&T park that was it a long-term care facility or a rehab? And we said no, that it wasn't quite the right use for the park. And it might be worth, as a discussion of the council, to rethink that. I don't know if this research and technology park becomes the research, healthcare, and technology park, but it may be that the focus has shifted a bit. But we were pretty clear in those days that no, it was a rehab or something like that. Acute care or long-term, an LTAC, or I'm not quite sure, but it was something. And we said, no, it doesn't fit. And now the vision's a bit different, because we didn't imagine people living in the R&T park in a house or in a long-term care facility. So it might just be worth rethinking that a bit as this has emerged really to a strong healthcare bubble as well as research and technology. So I would just offer that. But I think the use permit or the administrative agreement, it makes sense, and I think the work that you all put into it over the last few months really paid off. So thanks for that, and happy to make the motion when it's time, or wait for my other colleagues to comment.
Jose?
I want to thank the staff and also the team from CHSU. I also met with them to discuss this issue for all the work they did. And we had a lot of concerns back in November, and I think they've addressed most of the concerns I had, especially about what I envisioned back in the day when this RT Park first came to fruition was that it would be a research and technology park. And I understand what Lynn's saying, that it's not just research and technology anymore. And when I was reading the economic report, I was taken by the description of the ed and med institutions, and I like that. And so are we ed, med, and research and technology? And when you Google, or I always Google everything, research, well, who does research? It's educational institutions, technology institutions, and so, I mean, it all fits. So are we now an educational park? Are we a technology park? Are we a research park? We're something else now. We're not just a research technology. We're maybe a research technology and educational parks, something like that. We need to rename ourselves, rebrand ourselves, because we promised a research and technology park because we envisioned the next Apple, the next eBay, or some other thing that before the dot-com bubble busted, and so we know where that went. So those things aren't happening. Those things can happen anywhere in the world. They don't need a physical place. But we do need a place to teach doctors. We do need a place to teach nurses, and they proved it. But if you're going to have an institution of higher learning, and we got to think outside our box. We're used to city colleges, community colleges, and universities, four-year universities. This is postgraduate. These are people who have committed to another 4 years of education to get a postgraduate degree. They're real doctors after they finish this. They're not just any PhDs in the room. Anyway, these are real.
Probably higher if you be careful.
Anyway.
Don't tell them about this part.
Anyway, now these are people with real. They're real doctors. I call those real. If you have an MD or what graduate? Yeah, they're real doctors. I mean, they can cut you up. If anyone can cut you up and sew you back together, those are the real doctors. And in my book. So if we have an institution or several institutions of higher learning, there's things that come with it, and that's housing for staff, students, and faculty. Those are things amenities that just come with an institution of higher learning. If we want a Stanford, if we want a USC, we need those amenities. My concern back in November was I just didn't want a residential development or a multi-family development in our RT park. And now with what staff and the university has done and the proponents of the university have done, is I think there's some assurances that that's not what we're building. And I think I said it last time. If you want to build us a university, we'll give you the authority to build housing there too. But you better come with the university as well. So I think what we have before us will safeguard the city, that vision we had of research, technology, has an added component. That's that educational component, and that will give us that med component as well. That complements what Lynn was talking about. All that whole area has now become a medical hub, and that's wonderful for our city.
Certainly.
Yes, and I think we have the opportunity to say, as our community, to plant that vision that we want to be the location in the San Joaquin Valley of the highest the best technology, the best healthcare, the best educated, highest wage earner technology, research, healthcare park in the valley. And that, I think we're well on our way. So I just wanted to kind of echo and thank you for what you said, because I think that's exactly right. That's the vision we're trying. This the flag is not today, 50 years from now, maybe by the time this is all done. Will you still work there, Flo? I'll be right there with you. No, not 50 years from now. But I think that's really, it's a long-term goal, but I think it's really important. So thank you. I just want to say thank you for saying that. I think it's right.
Bob.
Yeah, I want to start by thanking Renee and your team for putting together a presentation that was really an easy way for us to digest a complex set of issues. So I was I was impressed with, your team, so. When the Research and Technology Park first started, I mean, it seems like the ink wasn't dry before builders wanted to come in and build single-family residential in the R&T Park. And, so this is, I'm nervous. I mean, when I first heard about this, I was really nervous about how, we could ensure that, it's not just going to be an end around. And, you know, you remember Cargo Bay, right? Cargo Bay comes in and they say that, this is, you know, not going to be a storage facility, like a mini storage facility. This is the new up and coming thing with eBay. It's gonna make a lot of sense for people just to kind of, you know, store their eBay products within the storage facility. Well, lo and behold, it becomes a storage facility. It's just like a regular old Daryl's mini storage. And the Right Nowers actually came in and told us that. So initially I was like, you know, how could people do that? How can people say one thing and end up doing another? And it wasn't as though this was kind of an out-of-state organization coming in. I mean, this was somebody that was known to our community who came in with the Cargo Bay. So it was pretty disappointing. And then when the California Health Sciences University wanted to come to our R&T Park, you know, I was very clear in my skepticism that this was, you know, not likely going to happen, that we were just being used as pawns in some political game with the county. And so what ends up happening, of course, is the California Health Sciences University builds a really spectacular medical facility in the R&T Park. And that is absolutely consistent with what we have been discussing here, Jose, you and Lynn have been discussing about how there is an opportunity here for some organic growth to take place in the medical arena. And I don't know if you remember TC3, but what we learned from TC3 was that, you know, this concept of, you know, creating this place for some small businesses to come and grow in a way that's going to be very beneficial to the community within the technology sector. Everywhere we looked, it wasn't, there was a tie-in to a university, whether it was Stanford University or UCLA or some other, I mean, even in foreign countries. There had to be kind of this university component where the research was taking place in order to start some of the, I don't know, act as a catalyst for a lot of the new businesses that are created. I came into this, you know, with a lot of skepticism after I saw the medical building built and the amount of money that went into it. My skepticism, you know, evaporated for pretty stinking quickly when we did the ribbon cutting out there and had an opportunity to see what was going on. And now we're kind of moving into a different dimension where I don't want it to be another Cargo Bay, but at the same time, I want it to be, you know, the housing component. I want it to be legit. I want it to be where it is housing that's provided there for the students or the faculty or staff for CHSU. And I believe that the resolution and the that we have, which, you know, incorporates the MOU, is the best path forward. Now, that doesn't mean that one side or the other can not abuse the MOU as we continue to work through the process, but there's been a series of trustful steps that have been taking place that have brought me to a level of comfort that as we, should we move forward with this resolution, that we have a partner in CHSU that has shown themselves to be trustworthy, and that they will not be abusing I would say, privilege of being able to build housing within the R&T Park. If that happens and it's not related to CHSU in any way, you know, I'm going to be really sorely disappointed. But I think that we've learned from not just the words, but the actions of CHSU that we can trust them to move forward in a way that is consistent with all that we've asked them to do. And so I'm happy to be a person in favor of this resolution. I won't make the motion because I think we might still have to hear from Bong.
Bong, you know, for over 25 years, we've been promised here in Fresno a medical school. And when you wait for the state to bring something, it's taken more than 25 years, and we still have not gotten anything. And I think they have, what, eight kind of positions of partnership with, and that was celebrated so greatly. We bring 75 in, and not a word. 75 medical students in, and it's in our backyard. And so when you step back and you look at the social, you know, and the economic benefit, and you look at even just the Central Valley, Bakersfield, maybe Sacramento, what an impact this will make. That Clovis is the one making that impact. That in a couple years, there'll be over 400 or 500 medical students who most likely will stay here and go to school here and learn about our city. And because it is a destination, the MOU has to be nimble, and I'm glad that it was, but it also has to give parameters, which it did. It said, you know, how do we make it where if all this is true, the hospital has this state-of-the-art research stuff. There's a cancer institute right there. We have the medical school, which is going to do a lot of research as well, and then other potential businesses coming in there, medical. Well, they're going to need to eat. They're going to need to go, you know, entertain themselves. And so it's allowed for that potential to happen without giving us such finite, you know, parameters. And I like that about it. And as Councilmember Williams said, the Assembly family did not just say, it's a dream. They've invested, and it will potentially be in the end, you know, several $100 million. They already have 123 acres right now committed. And so we can't go, I don't know, not sure, you know, wait for someone else to buy the other, 155 first. No, 130 is already committed, and so we have to provide the pathway forward so that way this becomes a reality within the next several years that I see. And so I'm excited about that. With regards to the housing, I mean, with this type of, it also even helps us at the city with the multifamily that we need to build. And it's a great place for it, so it's right by the school, so you're not going to get all these neighbors coming out, right, and saying, well, why there, why here? No, it's right, perfect spot, right here, right for the school. And so I like that about it. And the retention of qualified teachers also, or faculty, that is key to a high-performing medical school. And if we can provide sort of all that, we want CHSU to be successful. And when they're successful, we will be successful. I appreciate the economic study that was done, and the tax dollars that these graduates one day will provide, the jobs that those tax dollars provide. That is something in which will be more than building a new home where we only get the tax dollar one time. And these are high-paying jobs, high-paying professionals coming out. So I look at it and go, this is so exciting for the city of Clovis. I appreciate the staff having the foresight to see that. I appreciate the council members who, I think you approved this before I got on the council, 2016. So you approved RT Park, and this plan was CHSU, which was, I think, remarkable to see that, and for us to now fix it and make it where it'll be something which I think we all will be proud of. And so thank you for an excellent report. I'm all in support of it.
Thank you, Vaughn. Jose, your lights on?
I just want to comment on Cargo Bay. Cargo Bay was a great idea. At the time, Cargo Bay was when eBay was like going gangbusters. But no one counted that Mr. Amazon would corner the market. And now he does everything through a website. And you don't need to do anything. eBay is just went by the wayside. And so Amazon, you get Amazon Prime, you can buy anything and one day it's here. And in a couple of years, a drone will bring it to you. So Cargo Bay was killed by Amazon, and but it was a great idea. And the good news is that there was a second use. but that's the beauty of this country, is that someone can have an idea, and it mattered at the time. But you still see that same business model in office space, where they share the receptionist, the conference room, and that's all it is, because they do everything at home. But they have a meeting place when we can meet, and so it was actually a great concept. It's just that Mr. Bezos killed it.
I'll just close that real quickly. Excellent presentation by staff. We appreciate the work done by CHSU. This will be a domino effect. In 10 to 15 years, we will have excellent jobs, be able to have kids that can, from small towns, Clovis areas, and some of our disadvantaged communities, that can actually see themselves as a doctor, as a pharmacist, a medical professional. It'll meld in well with the remainder of the uses that are coming in, the Veterans Administration, all the other hospitals, and the manufacturing, the light manufacturing that we're hoping to get on the other side of 168 will be hopefully medical technology, manufacturing. We could, the economic benefits, the social benefits will be huge for us. If there are no other comments, Lynn, are you going to make a motion?
I'll be happy to make the motion. Thank you to the Assembly family for your investment in our community. And I think this is a pretty significant event. And I think, Clovis, we were lucky that you found a home in the R&T park, but we're also good. And so I hope doing business in the city of Clovis, I know it's been easy for you. Our staff is terrific. So I think it's impressive. So I'll make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the city of Clovis and California Health Sciences University addressing the build-out of the CHSU campus.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Renee. It's nice doing business with you, sir. Tonight we come to a workshop for the City of Clovis to conduct a workshop to discuss the impact on ongoing city operations during the COVID-19 state of emergency as declared by the federal government, State of California, County of Fresno, and City of Clovis to explore actions the city may take in response to the crisis. Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I just wanted to kind of run through kind of an update on the usual slides I show you every week. California, this is a graph of California cases as updated on the state's webpage today. As you can see, the cases continue to fall, which is very good news. These are the Fresno County cases. Again, they are following the same pattern, and the current wave or whatever it is definitely subsiding, not only statewide but in the county. And this is a screenshot from the county's community page for the city of Clovis, and you can see we are also following that same pattern with the wave and the number of new cases every day declining. And it goes up and down, but the general trend is definitely down. Deaths are declining from their peak. They will probably lag, as expected, behind the cases, because the people that are passing away now are being hospitalized were first diagnosed a while back. So there's a bit of a lag there, but they are declining. This is the data reported for the city of Clovis deaths. Now, this shows the highest spike yet. I honestly do not know if that is due to the change over to the new database system. Part of the problem is the county is switching over to their database system, and there's a lot of cleanup going on as they're finding other, they're getting the data input into the database, there's getting spikes here and there. This is what was reported by the county. We'll see if it holds. It could be a number of things. We could have had 18 deaths this last week in Clovis. That's what was reported. Or I should say the total number of deaths went up by 18 this last week. It could be because they went back and found a bunch in previous weeks that were underreported that just got plugged into the system this week. It could be a number of factors, but it's something we watch, and we certainly hope it doesn't stay up that high for very long. This is the Fresno County hospitalization rate. Again, following statewide trends, we are seeing a decline in the hospitalized patients and in the ICU patients. The blue is the total, and the hospitalized COVID patients, and the red are the ICU COVID patients. So we're seeing a decline. We're seeing some, the good news with that is, as the projections showed, their ICU capacity, there's some availability, and I believe that the hospitals are now able to go back to some of the scheduled procedures that weren't necessarily emergency procedures that were just on hold, knee surgeries, whatever else. They're able to implement those again, so that's good news. The county and regional status, this is as reported as of last Friday, I believe. The county has 41.4 adjusted cases per 100,000 population. That's down from 58 last week, so that's heading in the right direction. An 11.4% positivity rate, which is down from 15.3% last week. And the 13.2 health equity quartile positive rate is down from 17.9. So that is all good news as well. As I indicated, the state, after many weeks of reporting 0% ICU availability for the region, is now reporting a 10.7% ICU availability, and the stay-home order was lifted January 25th. So vaccines, the focus has really shifted toward vaccines. The supply of vaccines, the number of vaccines that we can actually get into the county continues to be the limiting factor. The county has the capacity to administer much more than they're getting, but they have to ration out what they're getting. So currently focusing on the second dose for healthcare workers and public safety, and individuals 75 years of older. There's some hope that maybe next week they would start opening it back up for new appointments for general public vaccinations. Probably going to be 75 and older, but they're going to start opening those appointments up. The Fresno County has a web page. The public health has a web page that's dedicated to the vaccines, and on there's a link that you can click on where you can submit a vaccine interest form, and you basically fill out some basic data, your name, your email address, your phone number, your age, and your occupation. And with that, once they have that in their database, then basically when you qualify to make an appointment, you'll get notified. So we highly recommend everybody does that. We have links to those same county web pages on our city web page. We put information there on how to go about doing it. So really that's the best way to know when you're going to get a chance to sign up. So we're recommending that. And so that concludes my workshop presentation. Sorry about that. We'll come back to that. Didn't mean to steal anybody's thunder.
Cat's out of the bag, Bob.
Sorry.
Whatever it was.
Sorry, Bob. Sorry, Councilman Whalen. I hit the wrong button. But boy, it sure piqued some interest. They say Bob, and then I say John. Yeah. Sorry. This is like one of those. What do they call them in the credits? The little Easter egg scene in the credits of like a Marvel movie that tells you what's going to be in the next movie. So that's what this was. So anyway, that's my presentation, and I'm open for any questions.
Lynn, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the governor announced today that there's a chance that we'll be getting a new vaccination center in Fresno this week?
I heard that. I've heard some rumblings. In the center.
I think it's here. and I think it's by FEMA, and FEMA will bring their own vaccines. So we'll see if that plays out.
That would be very good. It would be very good to just to overall get the doses here. I know there is discussion going on as to, changing the priorities and the grouping as to 1B, 1C, 1D, 2. Are they going to go just to straight age, or they continue to target certain groups? So there's still a lot of discussion going on, and we're kind of waiting to find out what happens. But yes, we are following that news.
So that's good.
I just want to throw this out real quickly. I'm sure everybody else is getting emails from people who, especially parents who are concerned about reopening schools. I had a conversation with the board president, Dr. Fogg, on Thursday of last week, and he's asking us, and I invited him to call in. I don't know if he's going to or not. He's asking for us to advocate for some measures. That's something I probably need to sit down and maybe go to a meeting. I think simply our support for moving teachers up in a tier so that they can be more comfortable going back to work and getting things moving. And obviously we're not on the agenda for this. So, but I'm going to make some inquiries with him and probably people from the district, and then I'll come back and then we'll probably end up putting it on the agenda for a discussion if we want to take any advocacy position, or if it's something that we're okay with me writing one of my famous letters to the governor. But wait, I don't know. Bob, did you have something?
I was just going to ask about the CVS report. Clovis is getting vaccination through CVS. Do we know when that's going to be online?
No, we again, I think there's a lot of plans in place for vaccination sites, vaccination distribution programs, but there's just no vaccines to send out. So that's really been the limiting factor so far. So we have not heard any specifics, but we've heard quite a bit that it's coming. It's just we have to wait till the vaccines are actually available, the dosages.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from staff? Lynn?
I was just gonna, one of the things that I don't fully understand the barriers right now that's a school issue, because the county said that they could open. So I don't quite understand the barrier, but I do know that Kings Canyon Unified did a clinic with Adventists and vaccinated all 500 of their staff. So there could be some solutions we might be able to help the district find. I did reach out to Clovis community about vaccinating Clovis PD before the fairgrounds thing, because I just feel like we can speed this up in some way. So there might be some solutions like that are good advocacy positions. If I don't know how they manage that, but their school's been open since October in Kings Canyon Unified. So anyway, I feel like there's probably some solutions out there that I don't know, quite understand the barrier enough to know what that might be, but I just wanted to offer that as a possibility.
Right. I mean, I want to be as helpful as we can be. I know that there are parents who they're struggling, their kids are struggling, they're concerned about their mental health. The dropout rate is they're going to work on numbers for me, but I know factually from my son being a coach that they've had kids just throw their hands up and give up. And unfortunately, I'd hate to see that become a trend. Do we have anybody online? Did Mr. Fogg call or anything?
No.
Okay. I guess that's it unless we have any other questions. Okay, we'll move on to city manager comments.
I've got nothing.
Council comments. Bob, you have a show and tell for us?
I do. John, happy Valentine's Day. There's this little tree on the trail that gets decorated every holiday, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shouldn't say it's been doing this. This tree has been, I've seen it, I think it's actually just been Christmas and Valentine's that they've decorated the same tree. I know, right? Well, I can remember for sure Christmas. And then, well,
they do Arbor Day too, but that's not important.
So anyway, we've got Valentine's Day coming up, and our spouses are really special. So I hope that we all do something very special for them on Valentine's Day, because to be married to us is no easy thing. No easy thing.
Lynn?
Two things. One, I should have said during the workshop. I don't know, I have a project for Andy. I want you to do some research on the city of Davis, California. Did you see the news today? The city of Davis has, what caught my attention is the crawler at the bottom was like, they've created their own kind of COVID bubble. And they did in partnership with their university, and they have figured out a way to sort of support their entire community, school and town, and their positivity rate of COVID-19 is 1%. And the county of, whatever county that is, YOLO? Anyway, I'd love for you to do a little homework, because how they did that, and it's not unlike what we have here, right? But they invested in testing for every resident. Now, how do I pay for that? I don't know, but that's your problem. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I think it's an interesting model of how they took this community school connection and created, they use the word bubble, and I want to know more about that. And so, Mr. Mayor, could I assign that to Andy to come back and tell us about Davis, please?
I
thought we got one too.
We got a thumbs up from Andy. He's been drafted.
It's just an interesting idea to see how they did it. Now, they're a little bit farther away from any urban area, so they don't have a Fresno next to them like we do, right? I mean, they're close to Sacramento, but they've got the causeway, so it's not super close. Anyway, I just think it's an interesting city, higher ed connection that they've been able to manage COVID-19 to that level of positivity, I think is pretty darn impressive. So anyway, I would just love to learn a bit more. Huh? Yeah, it was just on the news today. Anyway, so just take a look. I think it's super interesting, and if anybody else could do it, it would be us. So I thought that was interesting. And I just wanted to just report, we did have a Measure C executive committee. Were you on that call? I couldn't see. Aren't you on that committee?
I was surprised I was, but I had something else, so I told him I couldn't be on.
So there was the first meeting of the Measure C steering committee as we planned for and evaluated 2022 ballot measure to extend Measure C. So that occurred, I don't know, some day that wasn't today, but last week sometime. So they'll be doing some polling and moving forward with that plan. So I just wanted to report out on that.
Is Trails going to be on the poll?
Absolutely. His trail's going to be on the poll. Yeah, and I think the discussion we had last meeting about, how do you expand trails to older parts of communities, as well as the maintenance question, which is having the trail is great, but anyway. So all those things I think will come out in the poll. So stay tuned for that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Lynn. Vaughn?
Thank you, Mayor, for leading the effort on the flag. I just think, that it looks beautiful, and also on the coin. And so we have something to give to others, and so appreciate that. And Luke, that graph you made last week, the final one, where it shows sort of the infection, that was helpful, and it sparked good conversation, but it also helped us in showing how we've handled the situation this last year. So I appreciate that. That was very, creative. Not creative, it was just good response. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then I've been thinking about the naming and how we keep it forever. And so I thought of two ways, Scott. One, sell the actual wall when the name goes to private, so that way it becomes a private owner who owns that. Or two, have a naming right like they named Chachansey Park, but now they just they'll own it for 200 years, whatever, and so that way, they've provided something which there's not a free, but there's something. I mean, couldn't we do something like that where there's actual naming right, and so that way the name stays forever? Just they do it privately, and I don't know if any of those are, but something to get it, because I want it to be there longer. So.
Jose?
I have nothing. No, but I was serious on the rebranding of the RT board. You know, and, so add the ed or the med, one of the two. It's either, or, I don't know, both would probably be too much, but, because that was a good report, and I like that those are economic drivers for a community, and we already have the med across the way, and the ed, and they're giving us the ed, so, and research is done in institutions of higher learning and other labs, and don't we have a lab out there? And what TC3 was all about was incubation, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what all this stuff is gonna do. It's gonna incubate somebody to go out, buy more land there to what you said, Drew. It's these medical devices, you know?
There's gotta be a way maybe to, instead of a Bitwise, like a MedWise or something like that, you know, that model, if it does work for Bitwise.
Like Cargo Bay.
The Cargo Bay for medical ideas, the Wayland Cargo Bay for medical ideas. I did talk to Darius, though, about an incubator. I do think it's a really natural fit out there. I know, Andy, you've been in conversations, but I do think that is the right. And when I went to the Community Medical Center board with this idea in 2013, as the original idea, it was, what companies do you sell a lot of stuff to? I mean, Community Medical Centers is a huge buyer of stuff and equipment and small devices. So I do think that's the momentum that could come from that. So I think it's, you think of all the investment in healthcare in that corridor, it's a lot. It is a lot. And they all pay well and all of the rest, so anyway.
And other than offering cake to everybody in the room, I don't have anything. So, Friday. I'm not in Medicare yet.
But you're right on the edge.
But I am that close.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Mayor.
We are in adjournment. Thank you.